Hello, strangers. You've tuned in to Neon Static, where every week one true, original, scary story awaits you. One you won't hear anywhere else. And I know, because this is the place I, your host, Vi, not as in Victoria nor as in Vivian, but do keep those guesses coming. Well, this is where I tell them. And I've got something else to tell you, but you'll have to stick around till the end. Or skip ahead. I won't know. But continuing on with the theme of Summerween, today's story is from an October some years back. A friend of mine was on travel, trying it out, so to speak, to see if he wanted to take the plunge on a job offer that put him back in my neck of the woods, the Midwest. And part of that was a night downtown to the nightlife, to see the sights, and maybe make a few friends or new memories. And memories he got, but not the kind he bargained for. This is story 166, and here's what happened. I'm generally down for anything. While I have a pretty structured job title, I kept finding myself learning new skills to help along a project when someone would quit or transfer, or we'd find out the Excel master guru we'd hired was maybe a bit overconfident. I didn't mind though. I like figuring stuff out. And that means that when I work with customers, and those customers would talk about how our company did X to help them, I got mentioned by name. And that meant job offers. I was on the East Coast, and while I had things pretty well set, I didn't have a girl or a wife or kids, nothing really holding me down. So I figured, heck, why not see what some of these other jobs could offer, even if they meant relocating? Well, one of the jobs was in Omaha. I had a few friends from when I'd been stationed there, so the draw right away was better than someplace I'd never been, like Albuquerque. I contacted the hiring manager and set it up so I could maximize the time away from work. I picked an interview date the day before Halloween, and Halloween that year was on a Friday. That was perfect timing. I imagined the downtown bar district would have a gang of parties and specials, people out there having a good time for the holiday. I made plans to stay through Saturday, in case I got a little carried away, with a return on Sunday. Then I called my friends and got my bag packed, and was on my way. The interview went well enough, from what I could tell. I was in high enough spirits that, when one of my friends, Katie, called me with an extra ticket to a comedy show that night, a Thursday, well, I took her up on it. She was enthusiastic, maybe a little pushy that we all dress up that night. Her idea was that we'd hit the show, pregame there, and then walk to the nearby bars to finish off the night. I told her I wasn't so sure that people would be dressed up, and besides, I hadn't made it to Party City to get whatever clearance rack offerings were left. But not to be deterred, she offered up her husband's costume from the previous year. It was the Tin Man, complete with a half-full bottle of greasy silver makeup. It wasn't exactly what I would have chosen. A Tin Man with no lion, no scarecrow, or no Dorothy was a bit odd. But free is free. I said sure, what the hell. That's how I ended up in a dark little comedy club in downtown Omaha, crowded around a table too small for even 3 chairs, slowly covering everything around me in a silvery film. Katie, who went as some Marvel superhero, the one with red hair, and her husband, Trey, gamely face-painted like me but in maroon, were taking the pre-gaming slow with a couple of beers. The first couple acts were maybe 10-15 minutes. Some good laughs, but they were openers, a little nervous. People were chatting amongst themselves, and I looked around more and more, scoping out if we were the weirdos for being in costume. Thankfully, Katie was right. Plenty of people were dressed up. While I was glancing around, I saw a couple come in. A girl in a fitted orange dress with a black witch hat, and a guy, her boyfriend from the way he held onto her arm, in a lab coat and black boots. Mad scientist, I'd guess, only without the usual crazy Dr. Brown white fright wig. He was bald. He just looked like, I don't know, the mad scientist's assistant, Kevin. I said as much to Katie and Trey. They laughed as they took a glance to where the couple found their seats. The only table left open was right by the stage. Not great. I saw the girl gamely crane her neck up to see the performer, turning only to place her drink order with the waiter that wandered up to their table. Kevin, the mad scientist's intern, was on his phone. I must have let my gaze linger a little too long on him, because he looked up at me, locking eyes. He had big, expressive eyes, and dark eyebrows that made even a glance up look kind of intense. I looked away quick. I felt a little embarrassed to have been staring at the guy, and I returned my gaze to the stage. Then came what I took to be the main act, specifically because he wasn't in costume, and because he got 30 minutes. He was good. He did a lot of dating horror stories, only funny. Because the couple was sat right there, my eyes kept wandering to the couple at the table right by the stage. Orange dress girl, mad scientist intern. The girl had a sleeve of tattoos, and wouldn't you know it, the comedian started in on a story about dating a girl who turned up with a lot of tattoos. She laughed, her head craned at a crazy 270-degree angle, and the comedian ad-libbed a line. Well, funny to run into you here of all places. That got a laugh from the crowd. But the movement next to her caught my eye next. The guy, the mad scientist guy, whipped his head up from his phone, looking surprised at the comedian, and then, with his eyebrows lowering, he glared at his date. A real mad dog stink eye that I felt from way the hell away where I was sitting. She didn't appear to notice. She just kept watching and laughing along. Eventually, the guy sunk his eyes back to his phone, and the rest of the set continued. Mad scientist guy was on his phone for the rest of the act. The girl watched the comedian. The comedian told his jokes. People laughed and drank their drinks. And while I laughed along with Katie and Trey, I felt a bit uneasy. I kept looking back to the couple, glancing, but having learned my lesson, I didn't let my eyes rest too long on them. We were only having Millers, Goldbellies, you know, but it was like I was picking up on people's vibes. Well, people as in Kevin, assistant to the mad scientist, up there sucking down his Jack and Cokes and staring down at his phone like it was insulting him. He stuck out like a sore thumb in a room that otherwise seemed light, and like everyone was having a good time. I nudged Trey. I gave him the chin jut over to the table and he leaned in to speak into his ear, saying, "Man, that guy sure doesn't seem to like the act much." Trey looked over at him, then back at me, giving an expansive shrug. "I think he's killing it." Then he guffawed. The comedian was pantomiming dancing with a girl who towered over him, finally giving in and allowing, at some point, you just gotta let her lead. Getting dipped by Mothra over here, might as well own it. That must have been the last bit of his act, because he did the two-hand wave and walked off the small stage. The lights came up, and as we blinked and looked around to gather up our stuff, Trey and I laughed at the many maroon and silver smudges all over the bottles, water glasses, and tiny table. Katie led us out into the night. The inside of the club had been full, and now in the chilling air, steam was rising from people's mouths as they laughed, chattered, lit cigarettes. The crowd spilled out of the club. I'd just turned around to ask my friends, well, where to next, when Katie groaned. She'd forgotten her phone and told us to hold on so she could go back and get it before a busboy did. Off she darted. Trey and I stood there on the sidewalk, chuckling about the lines we'd liked the best. The outside of the club was decorated for Halloween, with pumpkins carved, lights glittering and guttering from inside, making them wink in and out with light. The crowd was clearing, meaning it was only a couple of stragglers besides me and Trey, when bursting from the doors came Orange Dress Girl. Hot on her heels, near herding her like a sheepdog, was Kevin, the angry scientist. Nothing fake about his anger, though. He was enraged. That mad dog, eyebrows dropped over those big eyes look was back on his face. I stilled an instinct. Trey whirled around to see what I was looking at. The girl stopped on the sidewalk. She was speaking low, calmly, too quiet for us to hear. But the guy, oh, we could hear him. We heard him as he ripped her apart, called her names, insisted she wasn't faithful. At this, the girl's hands went to her hips. Her tone rose in the same way the school librarians did when the kids got too loud back in grammar school. I heard her say, "For the love of God, no, I did not want to sleep with a comedian. What on earth?" He butted in. "I saw you, the way you kept looking at him. Just the whole night watching him with a big smile. Those screw-me eyes. He had your full attention." No, he didn't say screw-me eyes, but you get the idea. She threw up her hands. "It's a comedy show. We literally paid money to watch and laugh at them. Why are you being like this? Why can't we just have one good night?" Kevin butted in again. "Oh, like he'd give you? I bet he'd give you a good night, that's what you mean? Bet you'd rather be going home with him." My throat felt tight. The guy, maybe he was drunk, but he sounded like he was winding up. And the girl, oh no. The girl wasn't reading the signs like I was, because she was laughing. I heard Trey next to me speak aloud my own thoughts. "Oh, don't laugh at him." And right on cue, Kevin looked around. His eyes lit on a grouping of the pumpkins, one massive, a bunch of little ones grouped around it. He stooped, picked one up, and hurled it at her feet. The girl squealed. She took a step back and tottered. Her heels were right on the curb's edge between the sidewalk and the parking lot. I watched her arms pinwheel as she caught her balance, her witch hat flying backwards to roll off into the dark of the parking lot behind her. The little pumpkin made a cracking, splatting sound on the sidewalk, cracking apart into pieces, juice spilling and wetting the concrete. Orange dress girl caught herself from falling, and then took a step backwards, fully onto the pavement of the parking lot. What the fu-" Without thinking, I called out, "Hey, stop that!" But Kevin wasn't done. He was livid, and now he was laughing as he grabbed another pumpkin, yelling something unintelligible as he threw it. This one was higher. It passed her waist level to splat into the parking lot. I heard it too. Wet thud, splush. She was throwing her hands up, telling him to stop it, just like I did. But there was no stopping the man. He now picked up the biggest pumpkin, lifting it up behind his head, readying himself to just airball launch it at the girl. I saw the light inside of it flare. I spoke aloud. "Oh, that one has a real candle in it," just as Trey spoke over me. "He's gonna set her on fire if he doesn't." And we were both stepping forward, our trance broken, the need to get there, get the pumpkin away from this madman before he hurt her, overriding the bystander effect. And from the club burst a tiny, red-haired girl in a burgundy spandex outfit, rushing out before we could get any further. She didn't cry out. She just bulleted like she'd been fired from a cannon, quick-stepping in her heeled boots and charging directly at the guy. Behind her came a couple of large guys, big linebacker-looking dudes. Everything happened all at once. With an oomph that could have been her, or the guy, or the club's bouncers, the pumpkin fell from his grasp. I saw Katie's hands jab out in reflex, and bam, she managed to catch it. But the guy was pushed forward, the other two larger guys having too much momentum to stop. Was it his rage? Was it his being drunk, making him already unsteady? Whatever it was, he didn't have the same luck as Orange Dress Girl in catching himself. He fell forward, his hands and arms still flung backwards like he was still holding the pumpkin, meaning he was falling head first. My eyes traced a trajectory from the curb of the sidewalk up. It met the space right above those bushy, crammed-together eyebrows. And I looked away as I heard the third, wet, thudding sound of the night. A gasp, and then a wounded, wailing scream. Was it the girl? Was it the guy? I couldn't look. The furthest I could push my eyes was to Trey's face, which was pale enough that I thought he was going to faint. I didn't see anything. I didn't want to see it, my God, but my imagination was replacing the smashed pumpkin's orange shell and dispelled yellowy guts with something redder. I grabbed Trey as I saw him begin to wobble, and I led him, my back to the scene erupting behind us, to the curb to sit down. He did so. I plunked down beside him. I could hear Katie's voice. She was commanding the girl to sit, yelling something at the club bouncers. And where the hell had they been all this time, I'd like to know. And finally, clopping those heeled boots over to us in a jog. She sunk down in front of us. She was glowing. I looked. She still held the giant pumpkin. Her nails punctured its sides. I looked closer. There was a spot of red on the orange. I lowered my head between my legs, and I puked. Sunday came. I flew home. I didn't take that job. Well, a bit of an abrupt ending, but that's the way the pumpkin smashes sometimes. I do try to give you guys a little more resolution. Leaving things unfinished, it just bugs me. It's why I started this channel, you know. I'm a writer, and I write, and write, but I have this problem finishing. So I set a goal. I'd write something short that I could finish. And then I did. Over and over, until I looked up and I had over 300 stories, memories, things that have been passed down from relatives, things that I was lucky or unlucky enough to see with my own eyes. And I felt proud, accomplished. I finished something. But then, what on earth was I to do with them? Well, I was aware of a certain type of video on YouTube, and I thought, why not? So here we are. We're near 2 years later, and just as I feel confident in recording and editing and thumbnails and posting, why not throw another wrench into things? So, coming October, I'm putting these stories out in written form. It's just self-publishing, but I'm sure as with videos there will be software and covers and ISBN numbers. Just more to learn. They'll be batched into groups of course, 13, the spookiest of numbers. 12 will be from the channel, but 1 will be extra. One that has not and will not be read on this channel, just to give you something for your trouble, should you decide you'd like to read the longer versions that I didn't cut down into conversational scripts. More to come when we're closer to that event. But in the meantime, if you are celebrating Summerween, or if you're generally a spooky kind of person who likes to get the chills all year round, then I'll see you again back next Tuesday when we do this all over again. And until then, take care, strangers.